With the release of Spider-Man Far From Home, we are now 5 films deep into Peter Parker's journey through the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And while these films may be critically acclaimed and financially successful, they still fall short of expectations as being the best Spider-Man movies ever made. It's as if something is missing from this franchise. What is that missing ingredient? Where did they go wrong?
Well, Fury asked me to come up here and see how you were doing. He felt bad about snapping at you.
Really?
You guys do have sarcasm on this earth, right?
Hey everybody, it's Dom. Thanks for coming back to the channel. Today, obviously, we're reviewing Spider-Man Far From Home. I will let everybody know from jump this is going to be a spoiler-free review because I know Marvel heads and their feelings about spoilers. And also, there's nothing I could really spoil in this video that the trailer didn't already do for you. Before we get into it, before we get too deep into it, I just wanted to let everyone know off bat, I did quite enjoy Spider-Man Far From Home. I enjoyed it about as much as I enjoyed Spider-Man Homecoming. I think they're two of the better movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think they're really delightful. Love Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I, in general, love Spider-Man, so I was an easy sell. However, everything that I like about this movie is like this double-edged sword where it's also something I dislike about the movie. It's very strange. I can't think of the last time I watched a movie that made me feel this way. I will talk lightly about the general plot, and I'm not going to go into anything that's more detailed than what you would get from the film's first trailer. I will, however, get out of the way that whatever you thought when you saw the first trailer for Spider-Man Far From Home, whatever assumptions you made about the direction the story would go in, you're most likely 100% correct. There are no major swerves, big twists. I mean, there is a big twist in the movie, but I assure you, you sussed it out the minute you watched the trailer. Like, that's just, like, that's unavoidable. We'll talk about one of the post-credit sequences later, but I'm not going to spoil it. I'm just going to talk about its significance, I guess. But otherwise, this should be fairly safe for people that like to avoid stuff like that. I'm trying to be fair here. That said, we have to kind of talk about what this movie is and what this movie is not. So, this is like the 6th Spider-Man solo movie, right? Because we had the 3 Raimi movies, and with the 2 Mark Webb movies, and then we had Homecoming. That's 6. So this is the 7th. And the thing is, there's like a vast difference between the Raimi movies, and even to a lesser extent, the Webb movies, and then these new movies. And I couldn't quite put my finger on what I thought was missing from Homecoming the first 2 times I saw the movie. I saw it in theaters, and I loved it. And then I watched it about a year later at home, and I still loved it. Like, I still really enjoyed it. And both times I felt like something was missing, but like I couldn't figure out what. Like, usually if I don't like something, I can generally articulate what I would have done differently or what I think someone else should have done differently to make it a better movie. And with Homecoming, I was like, well, I enjoyed it a ton, so like whatever. I don't know what could be different. It's fine. I like it. I rewatched Homecoming last night. I'm recording this on a Monday, and I watched it Sunday night. And then Monday morning, I got up and I saw Far From Home. And watching Far From Home, it all kind of came together for me. Like, oh, I know what's wrong. I know what I don't like. I know what I don't like about these movies. So the things I like about Spider-Man Far From Home. You guys are all aware of the plot. It picks up right after Endgame ended, basically. This is sort of like the epilogue to that whole saga of the MCU. And it's very much a eulogy for Tony Stark. Since Iron Man was this big important hero in the Marvel Universe, now he's dead. He was very important to Peter's life. The movie sort of picks up in that aftermath, and like, what does that mean? It also very smartly answers a lot of questions that people have at the end of Endgame about how bringing back half of existence, like what that would do to regular everyday life. A lot of the stuff is dispensed with very early on, very comically, so you don't ask too many more follow-up questions. It's basically hand-waved, and we kind of get right back into the plot, which is nice, because I didn't really want all these things to be disrupted. And, you know, it's very similar to Spider-Man Homecoming. It spends a lot of time with Peter, a lot of time with his high school life, and a lot of time with like that, like the good teen movie stuff. I know some people sort of hate calling it like the fake John Hughes stuff, because it really isn't even that similar to the way John Hughes writes teens. But I like that stuff. I love all these characters. I love the performers. Like, this stuff is the goods of the Spider-Man movies so far in the MCU. And Far From Home delivers more of that, which is fantastic. You love spending time with the kids and like the goofy teachers and stuff. Only this one is really about Peter going abroad on like a trip to Europe, and then Nick Fury and Maria Hill follow him there, and they need his help to fight these elementals. He's going to help Mysterio. Mysterio's from like an alternate Earth. You know, it kind of teases that this is going to be the MCU's version of the way Spider-Verse was. Yada, yada, yada. That's what you see in the trailer. That's kind of the gist. Pretty much everything you see in the trailer is like the first 1 hour of this 2-hour movie. And then whatever you, the viewer, watched in that trailer and assumed the second half of the movie would be, whatever twists you presume would happen, definitely do happen. So I'll try not to get into it too much, but like, You saw fucking Mysterio in a trailer being presented to you as a hero from the world. I think you kind of know where this movie is going. What I liked about it, I still like Tom Holland. Tom Holland is sort of like the definitive Peter Parker to me. I didn't like Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man at all, even though I love those movies. I thought Andrew Garfield was entirely too like charming and cool and like slick and hipstery. And Tom Holland just seems like good. Like he's cute and funny and good looking, but he still has like Peter's awkwardness and all that stuff. He's fantastic. Love all the stuff with Aunt May. I think that Marissa Tomei as Aunt May is amazing, and I really wish she had more screen time in both these films. But the time she does have, she uses effectively. So she's great. Zendaya's MJ is fantastic in this movie, and her and Tom Holland's chemistry is off the charts. I like the relationship between him and his best friend. I like the relationship between just Peter and pretty much everybody, except like the rest of the Marvel Universe. Like, I don't like how much time has to be spent with Peter and the concept of the Avengers and the other superheroes and stuff. We're going to get into that. Other things I do like, the key big things in the movie that did it for me is, like, one, I really liked Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio. He's amazing. He's almost as good a villain as Vulture was in the last movie. He just kicks so much ass. And he's like, Jake Gyllenhaal's one of my favorite living actors, and he's also the perfect actor for this role. Because the role requires you in the first hour of the movie to be believably a likable and enviable superhero. And Jake Gyllenhaal's never played a superhero before, and he's the kind of actor who would like to take on more challenging roles and stuff for the most part. So watching him do like what you think an actor should do as a superhero is really entertaining, because he's like making all the right basic choices and being friendly and shaking hands. He's like such a baby face. He's so good. Like, you're like, oh man, I love this guy. He's great. I hope him and Peter become best friends. He's like so good. And then when he is no longer that and they go in a different direction with the character, he's just as good as a completely different thing. It genuinely feels like they brought Jake Gyllenhaal in to play act being a superhero in a movie, and then immediately turn around and play act sending up the entire superhero movie genre. He becomes a character whose very existence and very nature is mocking what the superhero movie genre has become. And I don't think the movie commits to those ideas super hard. It definitely is in similar territory to like the Iron Man 3 reveal in terms of like in terms of execution and also like thematic stuff, but the way Gyllenhaal plays this guy, and I don't want to give this stuff away. Like, you know he's going to end up being the villain, so that's not really a spoiler, but like the way he is the villain, I think, is really entertaining. And seeing Gyllenhaal do the stuff he does is great. He's so good. He's fantastic. And it almost feels sort of like a bubblegum pop cover of some of the stuff he did in Nightcrawler, which is one of my favorite performances of his, and he's off the charts amazing. He's fantastic. I am so glad they chose him for this role. I'm so glad they chose Mysterio to be in this movie, and I think he's great. The flip side of that is that by casting Mysterio in the movie and using this particular setup in the trailers, the entire first half of the movie is sort of cursed by the fact that you know good and goddamn well that Mysterio is not a superhero. You know good and goddamn well that something is amiss. And the movie doesn't really do a good job of like playing with those expectations the way you would expect them to. It actually really just plays out as if it were true for a while. And you're caught up in the story enough to where you can kind of roll with it, but it does sap a lot of dramatic power from the narrative just because you're expected to like roll with it. Like, it would make more sense if they were like, look, we all know, you guys know that this fucking guy is like not who he says he is. Let's play with that. Instead, it's like, no, we're going to commit to this bit, and we're going to hope everyone else will too. And I mean, I get why they did that. They did that because ultimately the MCU is not for comic fans anymore. It's for like everybody. Like, everyone's an MCU fan now. So most regular people will kind of be surprised by it. And the ones that like have dipped into the pool enough to go online and know, oh, that guy's a villain, or oh, I watched the cartoon before, I know he's a bad guy, they're not going to be mad. They're not going to be frustrated. They're going to be fine with it, I think. And that's why it's not like a harsh criticism for me, I guess, is that I know that these movies are not for me necessarily, so I understand why they are the way they are. But that was something watching it where I was like, yeah, that is a whole ass hour of the movie that's like, you know, a lot of this thing that I know is not real. I think if it structured it differently to where the movie was tighter and shorter and like the first half hour was like that and then like a lot of other stuff happened, it'd be cooler. But by like bisecting the movie and doing that, I think it's kind of not the right call. What really gets me is the heavy focus on Iron Man in this movie. heavy focus. Heavy. Now, I'm aware that from a brand storytelling perspective, killing Iron Man at the end of Endgame was a huge moment for, like, a lot of people. Like, everybody. Even I was emotionally affected by it. I thought it was cool. So I understand that you need a breather movie before you go into the new phase, or whatever the fuck they call them. And it would be weird to not deal with the fact that he is dead. He's like this icon and stuff. I totally get it. What I don't like is the way it consumes Peter's entire story. Because if you watch Homecoming and this back-to-back, as I somewhat did, I mean, with a few hours of sleep in between, what you're watching are, like, not Spider-Man movies. You're kind of watching, like, Robin movies. Like, because Peter, in this context, isn't, like, his own hero, his own person, his own story. He's, like, the Robin to Iron Man's Batman. And that's weird. Like, it's not that weird. Like, there are stories where Tony and Peter are, like, have a sort of a bond because Peter's really smart, and, like, if Peter had different circumstances, Peter should be, like, an inventor and a millionaire and stuff. And, like, there are Spider-Man stories where Peter does, for lengths of time, actually have money and have, like, his own business and use his smarts and stuff. And it's really cool. It's an underrated portion of the character. To me, that portion of Peter, the person who makes things and is a scientist and stuff, is only interesting insofar as he's, like, the guy in the Marvel Universe that, like, makes stuff, but he makes it, like, in his aunt's garage. He's the guy who, like, makes his own web shooters and makes web fluid, but, like, can never afford to keep the components together he was always running out because it's broke, you know? Like, otherwise, you make Peter too much like Reed Richards or Tony Stark or other characters instead of focusing on what makes him special. What makes Peter unique is that he's, like, this everyman. He's a regular-ass broke boy from Queens, and, like, that's relatable to a lot of us, but it's also what's made the character endure for so long. It's one of the great things about Peter Parker. Peter's a regular everyman who, like, struggles with regular everyman stuff, and he is someone who is motivated by grief and went through a very profound loss that affected the way he sees the world. His worldview is why he's a superhero. That stuff's important. And the things that make him special, the things that make him Spider-Man, have been utterly stripped of him since he's come to the MCU. Outside of one scene in Captain America Civil War, where he casually alludes to his dead uncle, who, you know, gave him the great power, great responsibility thing, Peter never seems to be grappling with or moving on from the most traumatic experience of his entire life. And that's weird. I understand the mechanics of it, right? The mechanics of it are that because we already had 3 Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, and then we had 2 more Spider-Man movies with Andrew Garfield, and they both did, like, the Goblin stuff, they both did, like, the origin stuff, they both hammered all these things we've already seen very heavily decompressed, as we did with Brian Michael Bendis' Ultimate Spider-Man comic. Like, we as a culture have been smacked in the face with Peter's origin story so many times that I understand the concept of just jumping in and skipping it. I think people as a whole are so much more used to superhero stories now that we don't really need to sit around for an hour of a 2-hour movie for someone's origin. We just want them put on the cape and fighting bad guys. I respect that. I'm with it. Totally cool. However, I don't like just pretending that his origin never happened. It's one thing to just, like, truncate it or make it explainably very quickly and then moving forward. It's another to just sort of act like he got spider powers and his uncle's dead, and now he's a superhero. But none of that matters because he met Tony Stark. And then Tony Stark, he just becomes a part of Tony Stark's journey. And now that Tony's dead, this is, like, the perfect opportunity to make him himself his own character and, like, pull him away from, like, Tony's pull because he's not even fucking here anymore. And now it's even more so. There's even more Tony stuff. And it's weird. Basically, we've known Peter in this world for, like, a year or 2 now. And in theory, his uncle would have died right before we met him. And he's, like, completely been over that shit the whole goddamn time. He's met Tony a handful of times. Tony's dead, and he's just, like, distraught. And it's weird. It's odd. It's so strange to me. And again, I understand why. I get the reasoning behind it, but I don't have to fucking like it. It isn't just so much that they align him with Tony and they align him with Tony's legacy and the concept of whether or not he's going to be the next Iron Man. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has already established so many different characters. So it's weird that this movie status quo is like, we don't really know where a lot of the Avengers are right now, what's going on with the superheroes, who's going to be the next Iron Man? Probably Spider-Man, right? And, like, he's 15. And even the characters saying this to him and engaging him about this know that he's 15. It's odd, you know? Also, it's not so much just the fact that they wonder whether he's going to be the next Iron Man and all this pressure he's putting on himself and people putting on him. It's also the fact that they move him away from being Spider-Man. Like, he has Spider-Man in name, and he has his powers, and he has the web shooting stuff, but like, they don't focus on his powers as much as they focus on the suit he wears. When we met Peter, he had like a shitty costume that he made himself, and then Tony Stark gave him the costume that he has in most of the movies. And then in Infinity War, he was given like the Iron Spider costume, and he's still using that in this movie. And Spider-Man doesn't need like an onboard AI. Spider-Man doesn't need like all these weapons and gadgets and gizmos and stuff. Like, part of the reason the Dr. Octopus era, where Otto was in Peter's body, like that, like the Superior Spider-Man era that Dan Slott wrote, part of the reason that was so fun and exciting was because it was such a departure from what we know Peter Parker to be. The idea, like, hey, if you're this fucking smart and you're a science genius, you should have gadgets and you should be different. But ultimately, Otto's version of Spider-Man in his head was just Batman. It's weird to me that the MCU's version of Spider-Man is just Iron Man. Because Iron Man and Batman were both two of the most popular superheroes after like the '08 financial crisis, right? Because they're both their movies like Dark Knight and Iron Man came out at the same time. That's become like this like twin parallel narrative, right? And you know, we both like those two characters so much as a society, as a culture, because we all aspire to not be so fucking broke. So I get why people like are attracted to the idea of our heroes being like mega billionaires that can solve anything with their superpower, which is endless money. It's just that that's not who Spider-Man is. So to see Peter become more and more like this toyetic figure who has multiple costumes and multiple suits and ultimately is being pegged as an Iron Man style figure who makes different kinds of suits to suit his different needs when he already actually has superpowers, it's just weird. Because it implies that his superpowers aren't like useful or good. And they are. It's just that it's like the MCU's like second unit action people, the people that come with all the action sequences in all these movies and stuff. It's like they've already come up with so many different types of action sequences, and by so many different, I mean like the same three that we keep seeing. And that they all revolve around Iron Man-like abilities, like someone who can kind of fly and shoot stuff and like shit like that, and suits that kind of function as like Deus Ex Machinas that can kind of do anything. Like, yeah, that's what they're doing to Spider-Man, basically. It'll help sell toys, it'll help sell Funko Pops, it'll help sell, I don't know, future DLC skins in the Spider-Man game, but it doesn't make sense for Peter to have to rely on these things. It would make more sense to create a story with villains that would require him to more creatively use his own powers to defeat them, or his wits or whatever, rather than just every time he gets in over his head, he ends up like needing Tony Stark's entourage in some way. Happy Hogan's all over this movie. It's like the movie sort of teases like it's going to send Peter on a journey where he realizes he has to be his own man. He has to step completely away from the Iron Man mythology and just be himself and be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. But like, it goes a long way in the main movie, not the post-credit sequence we'll talk about later. It goes in the main movie to kind of leave him being Iron Man Jr. Like, he's this guy, there's a girl he likes, and they know his secret, and everything's fine, and everything's okay, there's no problems, and if anything gets too bad, he can call Happy, and Happy still has all of Tony's Iron Man shit, and he can make a Spidey suit and do all sorts of stuff, and that's not Spider-Man, dog. Like, Spider-Man should not have things going that fucking well for him. I mean, the last movie ended with Aunt May finding out he's Spider-Man, and then all this crazy shit happened in the MCU in between, and this movie opens up with her knowing he's Spider-Man and is just cool with it and is, like, friendly. We never get that moment where they like, worked on this together or talked about, you know, how scared she was, because, like, it just continuously just jumps through all that shit. Like, we just don't get any Spider-Man stuff that you should get. We've never, in the movies, had the really good moment of Peter and Aunt May, like, you know, sharing the secret. It's one of the, like, best things that happened in like J. Michael Straczynski's Spider-Man run. It's one of the best things like Bendis wrote in his Spider-Man run too. Like, it's a really cool thing that happens in the mythology, and we never get to see it on here because it just happens off screen. All the good shit in the MCU movies happens off screen. In Homecoming, Spider-Man is this like rookie kid, and Iron Man's admonishing him for not being an experienced, smart superhero like him, even though in none of the Iron Man movies is he a smart, experienced hero. It's just in between all the movies we're supposed to believe that he becomes this like, you know, grizzled veteran who knows everything, and like, he never was that. He was just like a fucking joke the whole time. He was always like a schmuck who fucked things up and then lucked into bigger, badder suits to fix them. It's just odd, you know, and I don't like it. I love Spider-Man, and I've really enjoyed these two movies a lot. I don't want to pretend like they suck because of this. I enjoy them. I think they're good for the most part, and because I know who they're for and what they're for, I can stomach it. But I think in the long run, they're making these movies less special than they could be. Like, we finally get a really, really good actor who's like a perfect match for Peter Parker. We finally surround him with a bunch of other performers that really fit. Everything is kind of falling into place to make like sort of the ultimate perfect, idyllic Spider-Man movie. But that's not what Marvel's really doing here. Part of the Marvel-Sony deal is they get a finite number of appearances by Spider-Man, and they're not interested in making the best Spider-Man movies. They're interested in using Spider-Man the best as a portion of their larger IP farm. So to the MCU, it's not lucrative to give us a really good Spider-Man movie. We've already had pretty good Spider-Man movies. Like, who cares about that? Sony gets to do really daring, crazy things with Spider-Verse, and that's good, and I love that. But these aren't really Spider-Man movies. These are just Spider-Man team-up movies. That's it. This is like a side Spider-Man series where every movie he teams up with an MCU character, and he hangs out, and they show you like a slightly different corner of the MCU, and he does stuff, and he grows a little, very little, and then rinse, repeat, you know? Next time it'll be him and like Thor, him and Doctor Strange, or like if they had any sort of balls, it'd be him and, you know, Tom Hardy Venom, because that'd be fun and cool, and why not? Who cares? It'd be entertaining. I mean, I don't know, I guess if Kevin Feige was really not a coward, he would like give us a harem anime that's just Peter and all the women from the fake girl power moment in Endgame. That would also be cool, like Tenchi Muyo, but with Spider-Man. It's kind of disappointing, I guess, is what I want to say. It's just, it just doesn't do it for me. You know, I don't necessarily need to see Peter on an Avengers team at 15. I don't need to see Peter, you know, fighting like Morgana Le Fay with Doctor Strange or whatever they're going to do next. I don't need to see any of those things. You know, I kind of really do want just regular Spider-Man stories, nothing crazy, just Peter trying to help Aunt May pay the bills and stuff. Like, I want him to go back to being like a broke-ass everyman, you know? Like, that's what I want. That's who Peter Parker and Spider-Man is, and I don't need him being like Little Iron Man. I don't need it. Tony's dead. Let's fucking move on. Okay, but a little bit about the post-credit sequence. There's two post-credit sequences, one in the middle of the credits that I would not call a post-credit sequence. I would call it the actual ending of the movie. And then the other one actually is like a cutesy post-credit sequence that has some lore and mythology stuff that'll make people excited, but it's mostly just kind of funny. There is no Norman Osborn thing, no Sinister Six thing. If you've read that on the internet, that's just a lie. You can just skip over that bullshit. That's not happening yet. But the actual post-credit sequence we do get, I had spoiled for me. A friend was like, yo, I saw on the internet this is happening. Isn't this cool? And I was like, oh, that's cool. That's like kind of fan servicey, but I want to see it. But I was really happy that they took something that could have been very bland, naked fan service that I would have popped for anyway because I'm a child. And they actually they figured out how to preemptively answer some of my complaints and leave me thinking that the next installment might be different. It probably won't be, but they made me feel like it might be and got me excited at the possibility. And to be honest, it's probably the best post-credit sequence the Marvel movies have actually ever had, in my opinion. Like, of any of them. This particular sequence to me, and its relation to the movie, and how it changed your like perception of the whole movie and your expectations for a sequel, I think it's the best one they've ever done. And I really liked it for what will be super obvious reasons to anyone who knows me and has seen it once they see it. But I think that, you know, the whole movie goes in one direction of what the MCU thinks Spider-Man could be, and this post-credit sequence to me sets up that like maybe they're actually going to give me the Spider-Man movie I actually want. I'll probably have to wait another 2 years for it, but it's a start. Yeah, so that's my take on Spider-Man Far From Home. I liked it a lot. I tried really hard not to spoil the whole movie for you people. I don't know how you guys get. Definitely see it, I guess, or don't. You don't fucking have to. You don't know Disney anything, but it is a fun movie. I think it's a good time. Always good to see my boy Jake Gyllenhaal rocking it, like always. If you guys have already seen the movie, feel free to post in the comments what you think about it, or what your opinions are about what I've said. Talk about your favorite moments of other Spider-Man movies, what you would do differently in the franchise, who you would cast as Norman Osborn. Me and some friends were talking about who should be Norman Osborn now that he's going to probably be a big MCU figure. And my dream casting for Norman Osborn is, you guys ready for it? It's Tom Cruise. Just picture Tom Cruise leaping into the air with no wires onto a glider, being the fucking Green Goblin. It is all I can think about lately. It keeps me up at night, and I'm happy about it. If you guys have better casting, I'd love to hear it. And, you know, just the usual stuff. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe so you guys can see me more often. And if you hit the little bell icon next to the subscribe button, you'll get notifications when I do put out new videos. There will be another new video later this week, since this one's kind of early because Spider-Man came out early in the week because of the 4th of July holiday. This video that I'm putting out later in the week is really personal to me. It's a little dark, I guess, but I really hope you guys give it a chance. It's just a little bit different from me. But that's it for me. Thank you guys for watching. And, you know, like I said, if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe. And have a great night. Thanks, guys. Bye.